One thing I absolutely hate about growing up is that you become more aware with how old you get. And that awareness just makes you realize that the world really just doesn't give a fuck about you unless you have fame, status, or authority, right? Like, you can see it in your daily interactions with other people. You notice people will talk about the gym, people will talk about how they make money, what investments they have, right? People will talk about TikTok and YouTube, right? These are all things that are based on your status, your money, authority. It's not necessarily a bad thing since these are the trends of success for modern humans, but it's definitely gotten to a point, especially since we optimize it further by using shortcuts to kind of analyze if people are worth our time or not. But yeah, it's gotten to a point where where I think it just dehumanizes the way we interact with people, right? Whatever happened to interacting with others just to understand one another, knowing their backstory, knowing what kind of person they are, how they think, their idiosyncrasies. But no, it's how much do you fucking bench, bro? How much money have you made, bro? I just think that the more we optimize, the less human we become. We're chasing something that isn't necessarily intrinsic to us. It's intrinsic to want to be the best, to okay, maybe not for some people. I guess they're fucking NPCs, but it is intrinsic to have competition, is what I'm saying, right? Money, fame, and all that. It's just the current title, the current label of what it is. Maybe in 200 years, it's like who has the most uranium bits or some crap. But anyways, I digress. Okay, yeah. So back in the optimization, right? So society runs on powerful people, figures. We look up to people like Isho Speed, Clavicular, Billie Eilish, you know. But I feel like there's no reason to really look up to these people. They haven't done anything extraordinary. They haven't done anything of meaning, I would say. They're just people who, in my opinion, got lucky with timing and then somehow built fame for themselves that just kept feeding into itself and growing larger and larger. And then people eat that up. And in my opinion, people who eat that shit up are actual fucking NPCs. Like, I don't understand what you do with your time to be so attentive to another person's life, what they do, their goals. How can some people be watching a stream for hours on end? Like, I get that it's entertainment, right? But it comes to a point where you must make a realization that you're literally just a spectator. You're not even playing the game anymore. And I think that's just pathetic because in a way you're cucking yourself from reality, right? You're feeding off the success of other people, much like a cuck would feed off of the pleasure of, their partner getting fucked. I think it's kind of ridiculous. But with the optimization, you could just kind of see it in people's behavior, right? Like I mentioned, it's opportunistic, right? And then people are passively cowardice. The passively cowardice could be an instance where people interact on social media where, if you don't really want to talk to a person, you don't confront anymore, you just ghost, leave unseen, delivered, read, whatever. And it's that lack of confrontation that actually takes away from human interaction. Like, we don't know what it's like to have an actual argument, to feel the consequences and repercussions of emotions being damaged, etc. Also, with the way we act, doesn't it just kind of piss you off that things could go on in the world and people would just be apathetic? For example, like Epstein, okay? Everyone's talking about Epstein. Oh, Epstein's Island, right? Talking about all this shit that he's done, drinking adrenochrome and all that crap. Next week, they're having Starbucks with fucking Stacy. Oh, Epstein? Bro, that was like a decade ago now. It completely slips people's minds. They don't really care because they can't do anything about it. They can't do anything about it because they don't have any power. They don't believe in actually making a change for humanity. They believe in self-serving. I really dislike people who take self-serving to the extreme end, because then you get manipulators, deceivers, people who openly exploit other people's generosity. These people are not human. Are not human. They could tell themselves as much as they want that they're the main character, right? Or they're surrounded by wealth, girls if you're a guy, power essentially, but that doesn't mean anything. Now, I know what I said is going to be a little controversial with power not being anything, but you have to truly understand power doesn't mean that much in the long run. Right? There's only so much you could do, so much you can control and accumulate. And what you have power, you're just going to want to accumulate more power, right? The whole idea of power is competition. You're going to be ego driven. You're going to compete with others. Your whole life chasing money has made you only think about money, right? You're owned by money. You have no life essentially. You will die not being anything. Like I said, I understand some people are going to find this statement a little controversial. Oh, but Arnold, money can realize things. Money can realize traveling, can realize taking care of a family. Yes, right? So can average income. Like, okay, average income is pretty dog shit for housing prices and, long-term freedom. But to take care of a family, average income is sufficient. It's not ideal, but it is sufficient. Okay, this doesn't apply to all cases, but an example of where power doesn't better your life is just by looking at figures, okay? Look at Donald Trump. Look at Elon Musk. Look at anyone with money, okay? Royalty, even. They are actively facing problems, just on a higher level, I guess. In my opinion, money doesn't do anything except just realize what you want to consume, what you want to buy. But obviously, I'm talking about having a lot of money, right? Excessive amounts of money. Obviously money is needed to buy food, survive, necessities, etc. One thing I particularly dislike about common people, common folk, is that they're such fucking bootlickers. It's actually crazy. For example, okay, let's go back to 3-4 years ago. Andrew Tate, right? Everyone was raving about Andrew Tate, how he was the shit, how he was top G. But at the end, he was just a piece of shit. Everything he says doesn't quite make sense when he's contradicting himself. For example, when he was talking about how girls are such fucking sluts, but he's the one exploiting them on cam girls to make money. That's just fucked up. You aren't what you say you are. How are you going to expect young men to look up to you when you're just contradicting yourself and resorting to immoral tactics to make money? I also hate the way people say, all big money doesn't come clean. Yeah, okay, sure, buddy, sure. All big money doesn't come clean. That is a load of bullshit. To me, that just sounds like an excuse to resort to the easy way of making money. You're gonna really abandon your morality for money? That's fucked up. And on top of that, the way people act with small influencers, I'm not gonna name certain influencers, but let's say bodybuilders who have a good physique. And then you have these NPCs who are like that's the shit. And I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't look up to a better lifestyle, but you're essentially you're a bootlicker. And I say bootlicking in the sense that people will look at someone, right, who's made a lot of money and only see that as a highlight, right? They don't really consider how it's made because, oh, hey, all good money doesn't come clean or whatever bullshit you want to tell yourself. All right? But I'm just thinking, who the fuck are you? These influencers don't give a fuck about you and you're just sucking their dicks. For what? For what? In hopes that you become like that one day by just constantly looking at them and cucking your lifestyle? No, bro. You're literally just feeding into their ego, which improves their interactions on their YouTube videos or their Instagram reels or whatever. I just dislike the fact that people will try to justify anything as long as it makes money. You're just a slave to money.